Would you classify Fate as an isekai? You wouldn't, would you?
Fate Zero. No, Fate Zero is a whole.
It's
different
a whole
thing,
different
honestly.
thing on its own.
Fate
It's fantasy.
is a fate. That's all I'm gonna say. Fate.
I can't. You tell me to watch it so much, and I still can't get into it. Like
Fate
I
is
just
just
need
a
to
fate.
get into it.
It's
and
for like a very particular
Order.
audience,
Mm.
and like in terms of like, because they kind of explain everything to you directly in the first episode, which is why the first episode is like 50 minutes or an hour, just because they explain it how the world works, so that from that point on you can focus on the story and the characters, and in overall it has like a really good premise. There's a lot of themes to the show as well, that when you like read up about it on the internet, it makes sense. Obviously, you have to pay attention to the show and like look at the underlying messages with the characters, both the protagonist and the antagonists. But it depends like what your taste level is again. Because I put off Fate for so long, even though I'd seen it on the internet and stuff, and like seen all the YouTube clips and of like the fights and things. But then what really drew me to Fate as a series was like the storytelling and like the character development of everyone in the show. So that's kind of where I keep like pushing people. Oh yeah, you should watch Fate Zero. Not even just for like the animation because of Ufotable, but like for like the story as a whole is pretty good. So
Yeah, with Fate, I think the hardest thing for me to get into it was just kind of figuring what it's about, because it's pretty. There's a lot, even because the first Fate, I watched Fate out of order, and I think 90%
That's my
of
problem.
people-
That's what I did, and I couldn't get into.
90% of people watch Fate out of order. They don't really do the best job in, because they all kind of share the same name and don't really do a good job of telling you what's main line, what's sign line, what's an OVA, what's not. So I watched Fate Infinite Budget Works second. First, sorry. And it's meant to be the sequel to
Isn't
Fate.
that like the is that the 2000 and something one?
So-
with
20
Robin?
so 20 Fate Unlimited Blade Works is 2014.
Because didn't they redo that one? Because wasn't like
So
Remake it, didn't they?
yeah, so they redid Fate Unlimited Blade Works. They had like an OG version, which I think was a movie,
Yeah.
and they made it a series in 2014,
okay,
which was
okay.
on Netflix. But it's Fate Zero that's like the
The-
prequel to everything. Then and then how Fate works is that they have, because it was originally a web novel, where you
Was it a
like
manga?
no, so there's no manga. So originally it was like a web novel, and you play as Shiro, who's the main character, and they have, depending on the types of choices that you make in the game, there are 3 routes
And
based on the main characters. So there's a route for Saber, who's King Arthur, who's your servant, the blonde girl. Then there's a route for Rin, who is Shiro's classmate. And then there's a route for
Is it to
Sakura.
Is it to be like in a relationship with them? Or is it
Yes,
just-
so in a relationship, and like just in terms of story and
Oh,
how
yeah.
the
She's
story
involved.
goes,
Yeah.
and like the overall like kind of like message of the story as well. There's like different, I forgot which meanings they each have, but like they all have like different meanings in each series. So originally it's Fate Zero, which is the prequel, because you play as the main character in Fate Zero is Shiro's dad. Then in then after Fate Zero, there's Fate Stay Night, which is the Saber route.
Oh,
Then-
okay, that makes so much.
which is
now it
the
makes
which is
sense
the
now.
old
It
which is
makes
the
sense
first one,
now.
because that's the oldest one.
Okay.
Then there's Fate Unlimited Blade Works, which is Rin's route,
So all of
Exactly.
the-
And
so
then
all of them
there's
have their different
Fate
endings.
Heaven's
and so,
Feel.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
and then there's Fate Heaven's Feel, which is Sakura's route. But in terms of like proper chronological order, in terms of what you should watch, Fate Zero first, then realistically Unlimited Blade Works, and then Heaven's Feel, just because Stay Night wasn't, the original one wasn't done really well, and because it's old. You can still watch it if you want to, but obviously in terms of like progression, it's better to just watch Fate Zero, Unlimited Blade Works, and then Heaven's Feel. And obviously Unlimited Blade Works and Heaven's Feel start off the same, but then they both have very different endings, and they're for very different like kind of audiences, because Heaven's Feel is very much a dark and very adult like anime, compared to Unlimited Blade Works, which is kind of more like a shonen
Nah.
type of vibe. And even then it's not really.
It's not
yeah.
really, no. There's a scene,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. That you just, I remember, because I think I watched that weekly, because that's what my first introduction to Fate was Unlimited Blade Works. I was watching that and I was like, this kind of seems cool. I didn't really understand the premise of what the objective of the Holy Grail or stuff they were doing was, but I just found it interesting. And then you go to one scene and I was just like, did I just have it? And it's the one with the girl.
Trying to remember.
You know, his dad's. I forgot what they're called. Like
The servant.
they're essentially homunculi, basically. That they make out of magic.
Oh,
Her daughter.
I see.
Yeah,
I
the
know
bit
you're
with
talking
her.
about.
Yeah, when
yeah.
when
Ilya.
yeah. when Gilgamesh gets her. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that bit there, that was pretty
Yeah,
intense. So yeah, I watched
Actually,
that.
yeah.
Then I watched Fate Zero, and
Yeah.
everything made sense
Yeah.
because they were referencing characters that I didn't
Characters,
know
yeah.
and stuff. So I feel like some shows it's actually better. I don't. Okay, it's not better, but you do appreciate a bit more of the storytelling watching them in the wrong order.
Yeah, that's actually what. Funny enough, you said that because that's what the guy who, what's the name of the studio that not Ufotable, but is he Ufotable?
Period. No.
No, it's the whole universe of Fate. What's the name? I'm gonna have to look this up.
Did Ufotable do?
Fate.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Ufotable animated all of the Fate series
For
and
a
other,
long time,
and other stuff.
all you thought it was Fate, and everyone got annoyed because probably have more Fate iterations than
Other
some studios have animes ever done.
Type Moon. So Type Moon is the company that made Fate, and they
Publishing.
have like a whole like universe because they link some of their shows as well in terms of like lore.
Because I remember you
So-
telling me that.
Yeah, like so one of the shows I told everyone about.
God.
You know,
Garden of
Garden of
Sinners.
Sinners.
Yeah, you always tell
That's
me
like
that. I
yeah.
still,
It's one of the best movie series I've watched, especially because it's not in chronological order.
Mm.
Oh,
So you can either watch it in terms of in chronological order and like the story makes sense, or you watch it in the order that it's intended to in terms of when the movies came out,
dropped, yeah.
and the story will reveal itself over
Like,
time, which is what
okay,
I did
that's better,
first time
isn't it?
around. Yeah, and it's just a whole different experience.
Because I was watching something called Monogatari.
Monogatari. Yeah,
Yeah, is it? I think it's like.
the one with the vampires.
Yeah, I started watching that, and it's like, because I tried to watch it in chronological order. No, did I watch it in chronological order?
I probably-
No,
probably
I didn't
didn't.
watch it in chronological. I watched it a website. I searched up on the website, and they told me to watch it in a particular order, and I tried to watch it in that particular order. But it's like, I feel like if I watched it in the chronological order, I would have enjoyed it more. Because I never finished watching it. I dropped it because
You
I was
watched it
like,
because it just you kind of knew something was coming next.
yeah. So that's that. If I watch, because it's interesting. Because I remember I was watching, because there's 3 films as well. So you have to watch the first season, watch the 3 films, and then
And
watch the
continue.
because the 3 films is how he ends up being a vampire. So it's like, I watched it that order, but I don't know whether I don't know what it was. I didn't really enjoy watching it in that order for some reason. So yeah.
A lot of shows, a lot of stories. People write stories kind of from a point, then they just kind of expand both ways. Obviously not anime related, but the Star Wars series, which I happen to be a big fan of, I feel like everyone who's a Star Wars fan understands that. Yeah, the story is not meant to be in order because they made the original, then they made the prequels, then they've just filled it with anthology movies and stuff that make the universe bigger, which I feel a lot more bigger genres like anime should probably do. Like for example, I don't know if you guys have watched Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which is like the animated
Yeah,
series.
I love that.
None of that was in order of the Clone Wars.
Seriously?
No, season 1 to 6 is in the complete order. The first actual episode chronologically, if you're looking at the Clone Wars, happens in season 5, episode 24, and that's literally when that comes after the Clone Wars movie when Anakin. That comes before he even meets Ahsoka. So at that point, Ahsoka isn't even the story. Then the Clone Wars movies happen. So someone on Reddit, God bless Reddit, puts everything in order, and then you start to understand that this makes so much more sense because you're looking at different pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, understanding that this thing that in the movies was just the Clone Wars happened wasn't as black and white as you probably thought it was. But yeah.
I think the show wasn't in order because even when you're watching it, you're like, this feels a bit.
Yeah, you'd have like the next
Shuffled.
episode would just be
Yeah, we completely something else.
something
like-
else. They did it on purpose. I think it was Dave Filoni. He's the one who's doing stuff with like the Mandalorian and all that good stuff. He wanted to do that on purpose because he wanted you to feel how kind of haphazard the Clone Wars in itself was, and understand how easily it was for the Jedi to get tricked because there was just so much stuff happening at different points. You just you couldn't really get a feel for
What was going on?
what was going on. But yeah.